The diner smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams, a scent I'd grown so accustomed to that I barely noticed it anymore. Grease clung to the air, mixing with the sharp tang of disinfectant I'd used to mop the floors an hour before closing. My feet ached in shoes held together by duct tape and stubborn hope, the kind of pain that had become a constant companion during my double shifts at Rosie's diner. I pressed my forehead against the cold window, watching the November rain hammer against the glass. Each droplet raced downward like tiny souls fleeing something terrible. The street outside glistened black under the flickering neon sign. Half the letters had died months ago, so it just read "Row Eyes" now. Fitting, really. Everything in my life felt incomplete. "Table 6 needs a refill, sweetheart." Rosie's gravelly voice cut through my exhaustion. She meant well, but her sympathy only reminded me how pathetic I must look. 23 years old, 2 jobs, and still barely scraping together rent for a studio apartment with water stains that looked like screaming faces. I grabbed the coffee pot, its heat seeping through the thin fabric of my uniform. The warmth was a small mercy. I'd sold my winter coat 3 weeks ago to pay for antibiotics when I'd gotten sick. Stupid decision, maybe, but breathing seemed more important than warmth at the time. The diner was nearly empty, just old Mr. Patterson nursing his decaf and a trucker I didn't recognize staring blankly at his phone. The bell above the door chimed, and I glanced up out of habit. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, stood in the doorway. She wore a thin cotton dress, pink with tiny flowers, the kind you'd wear to a summer picnic, not a November night that cut like broken glass. Her lips had a bluish tint, and she was shaking so violently I could see it from across the room. Her eyes found mine, huge, dark, terrified. "Sweetheart, you can't be here alone," Rosie said, but her voice had softened. She felt it too, that pull of maternal instinct that transcends having actual children. "I'm looking for my papa," the girl whispered, her accent thick, Eastern European, maybe Russian. "He said to wait, but it's so cold." My chest tightened. I knew that kind of waiting. I'd done plenty of it myself as a child, before my mother finally disappeared for good and left me to the foster system's cruel mercy. Without thinking, I set down the coffee pot and grabbed my cardigan, the only layer between me and the cold tonight. It wasn't much, threadbare and 2 sizes too big, but it was something. I wrapped it around her tiny shoulders, kneeling so we were eye level. "Where's your papa, honey?" She pointed vaguely toward the street, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Big building, black cars. He said 5 minutes, but..." Her words dissolved into sobs. I pulled her close, feeling her freeze against my chest. She smelled like rain and something expensive. Lavender, maybe. A scent that didn't belong on a child wandering alone in this neighborhood. "Rosie, can you call? Already on it," she said, phone pressed to her ear. I held the girl tighter, rubbing her arms to generate warmth. She was so small, so fragile. My cardigan swallowed her, but at least she'd stopped shaking as violently. "What's your name?" I asked softly. "Anya." Her voice was barely audible. "I'm Emma." "You're safe now, Anya. I promise." It was a promise I had no business making. What did I know about keeping anyone safe? I couldn't even keep myself fed half the time. But something about her desperation mirrored my own childhood trauma, and I wouldn't let her feel that abandonment. The bell chimed again. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, though the door had closed quickly. I felt it before I saw him, a shift in the atmosphere, like the moment before lightning strikes when the air becomes electric and dangerous. 3 men entered. No, not men, predators wearing expensive suits. The one in front made my breath catch, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the deadly grace of something apex. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, probably cost more than I'd make in a year. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, beautiful in a brutal way, all sharp angles and hard lines. But it was his eyes that paralyzed me. Cold, calculating, gray like winter storms. Those eyes swept the diner with mechanical precision, cataloging exits, threats, vulnerabilities. When they landed on Anya, Something flickered across his face. Relief so profound it almost looked like pain. Anya. His voice was deep, accented like hers, but his carried authority that made my spine straighten involuntarily. The little girl's head jerked up. "Papa!" She launched herself from my arms, and he caught her with surprising gentleness for someone who radiated such controlled violence. He buried his face in her hair, murmuring rapid Russian, his hands checking her over with practiced efficiency. Looking for injuries, I realized. One of his men, a mountain with a scar bisecting his eyebrow, stepped forward. "Boss, we should—" A single look silenced him, then those storm-gray eyes fixed on me, and I forgot how to breathe. I was still kneeling on the floor, my arms empty, suddenly aware of how I must look. Stained uniform, no coat, exhaustion carved into every line of my face. My cardigan hung from Anya's shoulders, and his gaze tracked to it, then back to me. The intensity of his stare made me feel naked, exposed, like he could see every secret I'd ever kept. Something dangerous sparked in those eyes. Recognition, maybe, or calculation. "You gave her your coat," he said. Not a question. A statement. I found my voice, though it came out shakier than I wanted. She was freezing. He studied me for a long moment, and I had the unsettling sensation of being appraised, my worth measured against some invisible scale. The two men flanking him watched me too, their hands resting inside their jackets in a way that made my survival instincts scream. "What's your name?" His accent wrapped around the English words like smoke. "Emma. Emma Chen." "Emma." He repeated it slowly, like he was memorizing it, like it meant something. "You showed kindness to my daughter." Daughter. The word carried weight, possession, threat. Anyone would have— No. He cut me off sharply. They wouldn't. He was right, of course. I'd seen enough of humanity's ugliness to know that kindness was rare, especially in neighborhoods like this, where everyone was too busy surviving to care about anyone else's suffering. He reached into his jacket. I flinched, and pulled out a wallet thick with cash. He peeled off several bills without looking and held them toward me. "For the coat. And your trouble." I stared at the money. Had to be at least $500. "I don't want—" "Take it." His tone left no room for argument. But something in me, pride, stupidity, or maybe just bone-deep exhaustion with being pitied, made me shake my head. She needed it more than I did, that's all. His eyes narrowed dangerously. I'd surprised him, I realized. People probably didn't refuse this man often. "Stubborn," he murmured, almost to himself. Then to his men. "Find out where she lives. Security on her building. Discreet." My stomach dropped. "Wait, what? No, that's not—" "Non-negotiable." He shifted Anya in his arms. She'd fallen asleep against his shoulder. Peaceful now. My cardigan still wrapped around her. "You've drawn attention by helping her. That makes you— vulnerable." The way he said vulnerable sent ice down my spine. Not a description, a threat. "I don't understand. I just gave her a sweater. I don't need protection or money or—" "You will keep the money. You will accept the security." He stepped closer, and I scrambled to my feet, backing up until I hit the counter. He stopped just inches away, close enough that I could smell him. Expensive cologne, cigarette smoke, and something darker. Gunpowder, maybe. Or blood. "People saw you with my daughter, people who would hurt her to hurt me, which means they would hurt you to send a message." His voice dropped lower, intimate, despite the threat lacing every word. "I protect what's mine. I'm not yours," I whispered. But even I could hear how unconvincing it sounded. Something predatory flickered across his face. Amusement mixed with something far more dangerous. No, not yet. Before I could process that terrifying statement, he placed the money on the counter with deliberate precision. Then he pulled off his own coat, black cashmere that probably cost more than my car, and draped it over my shoulders. The warmth was immediate, overwhelming. It smelled like him, and I hated how safe it made me feel. "Someone will come tomorrow. 9 a.m. Don't refuse again, Emma Chen. I'm not a patient man." He turned and walked out, his men flanking him like shadows. Through the window, I watched him slide into a black SUV, armored, I noticed, with tinted windows that reflected the neon like dark mirrors. 2 more vehicles bracketed it, a convoy disappearing into the rainy night. I stood there trembling, his coat heavy on my shoulders, and his money burning on the counter between me and Rosie, who'd watched the entire interaction with wide eyes. "Emma," she said carefully. "Do you know who that was?" I shook my head, afraid of the answer. "Nikolai Volkov," she crossed herself, an old Catholic habit surfacing. "They call him the Wolf of Brighton Beach. He runs half the Russian Bratva on the East Coast." My knees gave out. I caught myself on the counter, my mind reeling. A Mafia boss. I'd given my cardigan to a Mafia boss's daughter. And now, he knew my name. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those storm-gray eyes dissecting me, heard that accented voice making promises that sounded like threats. I protect what's mine. The words circled in my head like vultures, ominous and inescapable. His coat lay across my only chair, a dark presence in my tiny studio. I'd tried to fold it, to put it away, but my hands kept reaching for it, drawn to the expensive fabric and the way it still held his warmth. His scent clung to it, cigarettes and something woodsy, cedar maybe, mixed with that underlying note of danger I couldn't name. The money sat on my nightstand, $500. I'd counted it 3 times, disbelieving. That was my rent. That was groceries for a month. That was the difference between surviving and drowning. But taking it felt like accepting something far more binding than payment for a threadbare cardigan. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep. My shift at the diner didn't start until 11, but I had my morning cleaning job at the office building downtown. I dressed in the dark, jeans with holes I'd sewn shut, a sweater that had seen better years, my broken shoes that let in water when it rained. I stared at his coat. "Don't be stupid, Emma. It's freezing outside." But wearing it felt like wrapping myself in a claim I hadn't agreed to. In the end, cold won over pride. I pulled it on, drowning in cashmere that cost more than everything I owned combined. The sleeves fell past my hands. The hem hit my thighs. I looked like a child playing dress-up in her father's closet, except nothing about Nikolai Volkov was paternal. The November morning bit through the fabric anyway as I walked the 6 blocks to the subway. The coat was beautiful, expensive, but it wasn't mine, and somehow that made it less warm, or maybe I was just too aware of what wearing it meant. The office building was a glass and steel monstrosity in the financial district. I cleaned the executive floors before the important people arrived, invisible labor that kept their world pristine. I liked the work, actually, quiet, solitary. No one noticed me, which meant no one could hurt me. I was vacuuming the 20th floor when I felt it again, that electric shift in the atmosphere. I turned off the vacuum, heart suddenly racing. A man stood by the elevators, not Nikolai. This one was younger, leaner, with dirty blonde hair and eyes like blue ice. He wore a suit that screamed money and danger in equal measure, hands relaxed at his sides in a way that suggested he could turn violent in a heartbeat. Emma Chen? His English was perfect, barely accented. I gripped the vacuum handle like a weapon. "Who's asking?" A smile flickered across his face, amused by my attempted bravado. "Dmitry Sokolov. I work for Nikolai Volkov." He pulled out a phone, showed me a photo. It was Anya, grinning, healthy, wearing my cardigan like a trophy. "Boss sent me. You have a security consultation at 9. I have a shift at the diner at 11. I can't." "You'll make your shift." He tucked the phone away. "This isn't negotiable." That word again. Non-negotiable. As if my life was suddenly subject to someone else's absolute authority. "And if I refuse?" His expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes. "You seem like a smart girl, Emma. Smart enough to understand that the wolf doesn't make empty threats. He said you need protection. You need protection. From what? From consequences of kindness." He gestured toward the elevator. "Come. I'll explain everything." Every instinct screamed at me to run. But where would I go? Back to my apartment that he'd already said they'd located. The diner where I'd met Nikolai. I had no savings, no family, nowhere to hide. And beneath the fear, something else stirred. Curiosity, maybe. or the dangerous thrill of being seen by someone powerful. How long had I been invisible? Years of scraping by, of being looked through rather than at, of existing in the margins of other people's stories. Nikolai Volkov had looked at me. Really looked. Like I mattered. Even if his attention was a death sentence, at least it was acknowledgement. I abandoned the vacuum and followed Dmitri into the elevator. The car that waited outside was identical to the ones from last night. Black SUV, tinted windows, armor plating visible at the edges. Dmitri opened the back door with practiced efficiency. After you. The interior smelled like leather and wealth. I sank into seats more comfortable than my bed, hyper-aware of how out of place I was. Dmitri slid in beside me, and another man, the scarred mountain from the diner, took the driver's seat. We pulled into traffic, heading toward Brighton Beach. "Here's the situation," Dmitri said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Last night you were seen helping Anya by approximately 15 people. Some were nobody. But at least 3 have connections to the Antonov Bratva." "I don't know what that means." "It means our enemies know you showed kindness to the boss's daughter, which makes you either an asset or a liability." He studied me with clinical detachment. "Boss decided you're an asset. Others might disagree." My mouth went dry. "Others?" "Yuri Antonov runs the rival organization. He's been trying to find leverage against Nikolai for years. Anya is complicated, protected, untouchable." He leaned back, casual despite the weight of his words. "But you? You're nobody. No family. No connections. No one who'd notice if you disappeared." The casual cruelty of that truth hit like a physical blow. "So I'm bait," I whispered. "You were bait the moment you wrapped that cardigan around Anya." He didn't sound apologetic, just pragmatic. "Now you're protected bait. Much better outcome." We turned down a street I didn't recognize, stopping in front of a restaurant with Cyrillic letters above the door. Even closed, it radiated menace. The kind of place where deals were made and bodies were buried. Dmitri led me around back, through a door that required 3 different keys. The interior was all dark wood and red velvet, expensive and oppressive. Cigarette smoke hung in the air despite the early hour. Men looked up as we entered. Hard men with harder eyes, each radiating the kind of violence that becomes casual through repetition. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, but Dimitri's hand on my elbow kept me moving forward, to a private room in the back. Nikolai sat behind a massive desk, studying a laptop with focused intensity. He'd discarded his jacket, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars. A cigarette burned in an ashtray beside him, smoke curling upward like trapped souls seeking escape. He didn't look up immediately, and I had the sense this was deliberate. A power play, making me wait, making me aware of my own insignificance in his world. When he finally raised his eyes, the impact stole my breath. In the diner's fluorescent lighting, he'd been dangerous. Here, in his domain, he was absolutely terrifying. "Emma." My name in his mouth sounded like possession. "You came." Did I have a choice? A smile ghosted across his lips. Not warm, but acknowledging. "No," he gestured to the chair across from him. I sat, feeling like a mouse accepting an invitation into a snake's den. Dmitri remained by the door, silent sentinel. Nikolai studied me with that same unsettling intensity, cataloging details. His gaze lingered on his coat, still wrapped around my shoulders. "It suits you," he said quietly. I flushed, embarrassed to be caught wearing it. "I'll return it. It was cold and I..." "Keep it." He leaned back, lighting a fresh cigarette. "Consider it payment for services rendered." "I don't want payment. I told you." "What you want is irrelevant." The words were harsh, but his tone remained almost gentle. "You're in danger because of me, because my daughter wandered away from her bodyguards and found her way to a diner where a foolish girl decided kindness was more important than self-preservation. Kindness isn't foolish. In my world, it's suicidal." He took a long drag, exhaling smoke slowly. "Tell me about yourself, Emma Chen." The subject changed through me. "What?" "Your life, family, how you ended up serving coffee at midnight in the worst part of Brooklyn." "Why do you care?" His eyes narrowed dangerously. Because I need to know everything about the people I protect. Vulnerabilities, weaknesses, what leverage enemies might use. He tapped ash into the tray. And because you interest me. That last part sounded far more threatening than any of his earlier statements. There's nothing interesting about me, I said carefully. I'm nobody. You said so yourself. No family, no connections. Dimitri said that. I didn't. He leaned forward, elbows on the desk. I said you showed kindness when you had every reason to be selfish. That makes you either remarkably stupid or remarkably rare. Maybe both. Another ghost of a smile, maybe. He waited, patient as a predator, and I realized he would sit here all day if necessary. This man commanded empires through sheer force of will. My silence meant nothing to him, so I talked. Told him about foster care, about aging out of the system at 18, with nothing but a high school diploma and survival instincts. About working 3 jobs at one point, sleeping 4 hours a night, clawing my way to something resembling stability. About dreams I'd abandoned because dreaming required energy I didn't have. He listened without interrupting, smoking, watching me with those calculating eyes. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Your parents? He finally asked. Mother left when I was 6. Father... I swallowed hard. I never knew him. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or understanding that came from shared damage. Anya's mother is dead, he said quietly. Killed by Yuri Antonov 3 years ago. She was pregnant with our second child. The confession hung between us, raw and unexpected. I didn't know what to say, how to respond to such devastating honesty from a man who dealt in violence and fear. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. His voice hardened. It made me stronger, sharper. I rebuilt everything after losing her. Made sure no one could ever hurt what's mine again. Those gray eyes pinned me in place. Which is why you'll accept my protection, Emma. Because Anya loves that cardigan. She slept with it last night, clutching it like a security blanket. Which means you matter to her, and anything that matters to my daughter matters to me. The weight of that statement crushed the air from my lungs. I don't want to matter, I said desperately. Too late. He stood, moving around the desk with predatory grace. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You're mine now, Emma Chen, under my protection, which means under my control. I'm not... He gripped my chin, forcing me to hold his gaze. His touch was surprisingly gentle despite the steel in his voice. You are. The moment you gave Anya warmth, you became part of my world. There's no walking away from that. His thumb brushed my lower lip, and electricity shot through my entire body. I could run, I breathed. You could try. He released me, stepping back. But I'd find you, and I'd be disappointed. The threat and promise tangled together, impossible to separate. He assigned me a shadow. Not Dimitri. He was too valuable, apparently, for babysitting duty. Instead, a man named Alexei became my constant, silent companion. Mid-30s, built like he'd been carved from granite, with a face that suggested he'd seen things that would break lesser men. He didn't speak much, just followed me everywhere, to the diner, where he sat in the corner booth nursing coffee and making the other customers nervous, to my cleaning job, where he waited in the lobby reading Russian newspapers, to the bodega, where I bought cheap groceries, standing outside like a well-dressed sentinel. It was suffocating. Does he have to be so obvious? I asked Dimitri 3 days later, when he came to check on me, which really meant ensure I hadn't tried to run. We stood outside my apartment building, Alexei a few feet away, scanning the street with professional paranoia. Would you prefer he be invisible? Dimitri's tone suggested this was a genuine question, because we can do that too, but boss thought you'd appreciate knowing where your protection was. I'd appreciate not needing protection at all. Tough shit. He lit a cigarette, offered me one. I shook my head. You're in this now. Might as well accept it. For how long? He exhaled smoke slowly, until boss says otherwise, which could be forever, I realized with growing dread. Nikolai Volkov didn't seem like a man who changed his mind once he'd made a decision. I'd seen him twice more since that first meeting. Once when he came to the diner, an event that made Rosie nearly faint, to pick up Anya, who'd apparently demanded to see the nice lady. She'd hugged me fiercely, chattering in rapid Russian English about school and her stuffed animals, while Nikolai watched with an expression I couldn't read. The second time, he'd simply appeared at my apartment at midnight. I'd been asleep, restless, troubled sleep full of gray eyes and dark promises. A knock woke me, not loud, but insistent. Alexei would have stopped anyone dangerous, I'd reasoned groggily. So I'd opened the door. Nikolai stood there, still dressed in a suit despite the hour, looking like violence wrapped in expensive fabric. Blood speckled his collar, small drops, barely visible, but unmistakable. "Can I come in?" His voice was rougher than usual, tired in a way that suggested he'd been doing terrible things. I should have said no. Should have slammed the door, called the police. Though what would I tell them? That a Mafia boss wanted to enter my apartment? They'd laugh, or worse, tell me I'd brought it on myself. Instead, I stepped aside. He entered my tiny studio, his presence making the space feel even smaller. His eyes swept the room, taking in the water-stained ceiling, the second-hand furniture, the life of someone barely surviving. "You live like this," he said. Not a question. An observation tinged with something that might have been anger. "It's what I can afford." He turned to face me, and in the dim light from my single lamp, he looked almost human. Tired, strained, the monster temporarily hidden beneath exhaustion. "The money I gave you," he said carefully. "You didn't use it. I'd hidden it in a coffee can under my sink. Stupid place, probably, but I couldn't bring myself to spend it. Spending it meant accepting everything that came with it. I don't need your money. You need everything." He stepped closer, and I backed up instinctively until I hit the wall. He stopped just inches away, boxing me in without touching me. "Your shoes have holes. Your coat, my coat, is the warmest thing you own. You work 16-hour days and still can't afford heat. How do you—" "I know everything about you, Emma." His hand came up, fingers threading through my hair with surprising gentleness. "Every struggle, every sacrifice. Every night you've gone to bed hungry because you didn't have enough for both food and rent." The intimacy of that knowledge terrified me. "Why?" I whispered. "Why do you care?" His jaw tightened. For a long moment he didn't answer. Just studied my face like he was memorizing it. "Because you remind me of her," he finally said. "Katya. My wife. She had your eyes, not the color, but the expression. Like she'd seen hell and decided kindness was the only rebellion that mattered." My breath caught. He'd loved her, I realized. Truly, devastatingly loved her. "I'm not her." "No." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "You're softer, more fragile. She was a fighter. You're a survivor. There's a difference." "Then why?" "Because Anya loves you. Because you gave her warmth when you had none to spare. Because—" He paused, something raw crossing his face. "Because I'm tired of everyone in my world taking and taking and taking. And you gave." Before I could respond, he'd stepped back, the moment of vulnerability slamming shut like a closing door. "Use the money," he ordered. "Buy food. Fix your shoes. Get a better apartment." His tone left no room for argument. "I'll have Dmitri help you look at places this week. I don't care what you want." The coldness was back, the monster reasserting dominance. "You're under my protection, which means you reflect on me. I won't have you living in squalor." He left without another word, and I stood there trembling, confused by the contradiction of his brutality and his strange, possessive care. The next day, Dmitri took me apartment hunting. Not in my neighborhood, somewhere better. Much better. A building in Park Slope with actual security and windows that didn't leak. "Boss already paid first and last month," Dmitri said casually as we toured a one-bedroom that cost 3 times my current rent. "And 6 months after that, you just need to sign." I stared at him. "I can't accept this. You don't have a choice." He gestured around the space. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen, a bathroom without mold. "Boss wants you somewhere he doesn't have to worry about your safety. This building has cameras, doorman, the works. This isn't protection. This is control." Same thing in his world. Dimitri's expression was surprisingly sympathetic. Look, Emma, I get it. You want independence. But you painted a target on yourself the moment you helped Anya. Boss is trying to keep you alive. Let him. And what does he want in return? Dimitri was quiet for a moment. I don't think even he knows yet. That terrified me more than any explicit demand would have. I signed the lease that afternoon, hating myself for it. But the apartment was warm and safe, and everything my current place wasn't. Survival won over pride, again. Moving day was surreal. I owned so little that everything fit in the back of Alexei's SUV. Nikolai sent people to help, men who handled my secondhand furniture with surprising care, who didn't comment on how pathetic my possessions were. Anya came too, bouncing with excitement, still wearing my cardigan over her expensive clothes. You're going to live here? She spun in circles in the empty living room. It's so pretty. It's too much, I muttered, but she wasn't listening. Nikolai arrived as the last box was being carried in. He dismissed everyone with a gesture, even Alexei, who looked uncomfortable leaving us alone but obeyed without question. Suddenly it was just us in my new apartment, and the space felt simultaneously too large and too small. Do you like it? He asked, hands in his pockets, affecting casual interest that didn't match the intensity in his eyes. It's beautiful, but no buts. He moved through the space, examining details with the same clinical precision he applied to everything. You'll be safe here. Comfortable. That's what matters. What matters is that I didn't ask for any of this. He turned to face me, and something dangerous flickered in his expression. You think I asked to care whether you're safe? To lie awake wondering if Antonov's men have found you? To feel physically ill imagining you cold and hungry? The raw honesty in his voice shocked me silent. I didn't want this either, Emma. He crossed to where I stood, backing me against the kitchen counter. But here we are. You've become important. To Anya. To me, and I protect what's important. I'm not yours to protect. His hand came up, cupping my face with startling tenderness. Aren't you? The question hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. I barely know you, I said weakly. You know enough. You know I'm dangerous. You know I've killed people. You know I'm not a good man. His thumb traced my lower lip again, that gesture becoming familiar, intimate, and yet you're not running. Because where would I run? He'd find me. He'd already proven that. Or maybe, and this was the terrifying part, I didn't want to run anymore. Maybe being seen, even by a monster, was better than being invisible. What do you want from me? I whispered. His eyes darkened. Everything. But I'll settle for keeping you alive. He kissed me then, hard, possessive, claiming. His hands gripped my waist, lifting me onto the counter, pressing between my legs like he'd earned the right to occupy my space. I should have pushed him away, should have screamed, should have remembered all the reasons this was insane. Instead, I kissed him back. His taste was cigarettes and mint and something uniquely him, dangerous and addictive. He kissed like he did everything else, with absolute authority, demanding surrender, taking what he wanted. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. This is insane, I gasped. Yes, he didn't sound apologetic, but you wanted anyway. I did. God help me, I did. A phone buzzed. His. He checked it, jaw tightening. Whatever the message said, it wasn't good. I have to go. He stepped back, adjusting his suit with practiced efficiency. Dimitri will be here within the hour. Don't leave without Alexei. And Emma, I met his eyes, seeing the storm brewing there. If anyone approaches you, anyone, you call me immediately. Understood? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He left, and I stood there in my new kitchen, lips still tingling, wondering what the hell I'd just gotten myself into. The answer came 2 days later. I was at the diner, finishing a late shift, when 3 men walked in. Not Nikolai's men. I'd learned to recognize his people by now. These were different. Wrong. They sat in my section, ordered coffee they didn't drink, and watched me with eyes that made my skin crawl. The largest one, thick-necked with scars marking his knuckles, smiled when I brought their order. You're Emma, yes? My hand trembled. coffee sloshing. Who's asking? Friends of Yuri Antonov. He said the name like it should mean something. He'd like to meet you. Talk about your relationship with Nikolai Volkov. Terror locked my muscles. This was it. The danger Nikolai had warned about. I don't know what you're talking about. The man's smile widened. No? Then why does the Wolf's guard dog sit outside? Why did you move into an apartment he pays for? He leaned forward. You're his whore now, yes? We just want to ask some questions. Rage cut through my fear. Get out. Or what? He stood, and his companions followed suit. You'll call your master? Tell him the bad men scared you? Alexei burst through the door, weapon drawn, moving with lethal speed. 2 more of Nikolai's men materialized from nowhere. They must have been stationed nearby, hidden. The Antonov men raised their hands, backing toward the door. Tell Volkov, the scarred one said, that Yuri sends his regards, and that pretty things break so easily. They left, and I collapsed into the nearest booth, shaking violently. Alexei was on his phone immediately, speaking rapid Russian. Within minutes, Dmitri arrived. Then Nikolai. He swept into the diner like an avenging angel, fury radiating from him in waves that made everyone, customers, staff, even Rosie, shrink back. His eyes found mine, and the rage there stole my breath. Tell me, he commanded, voice deadly quiet. I did, words tumbling out between chattering teeth. He listened without interrupting, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. When I finished, he turned to Dmitri. Find them. All 3. I want them alive. Boss. Alive, he repeated. So I can explain personally what happens when someone threatens what's mine. Then he pulled me from the booth, wrapped me in his arms, and I felt the racing of his heart beneath the expensive suit. You're done working here, he said into my hair. Done cleaning offices, done putting yourself at risk. I need to work. I'll take care of you. Not a suggestion. A declaration. No arguments, Emma. This ends now. And I realized, trembling in his arms while he made promises written in blood, that he was right. This was never going to end. He took me to his house that night. Not an apartment or condo, a house. A mansion, really, hidden behind iron gates and stone walls in a neighborhood where people didn't ask questions. The kind of place where neighbors minded their business and security cameras covered every angle. Alexei drove us in silence, Nikolai beside me in the back seat, his hand gripping mine with bruising intensity. He hadn't let go since we left the diner, as if physical contact was the only thing keeping his rage contained. You don't have to do this, I said quietly as the gates opened. I can go back to my apartment, the one you got me. It's safe. Nowhere is safe. His voice was granite. Not anymore. Yuri made his move, which means he's desperate. Desperate men are unpredictable. The house was beautiful in a cold, fortress-like way. Modern architecture, all clean lines and bulletproof glass. Lights blazed from every window. No shadows for assassins to hide in. Inside, it smelled like leather and wood polish, and Anya's strawberry shampoo, that last detail making it feel almost like a home instead of a stronghold. Papa! Anya appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing pajamas covered in cartoon cats, my cardigan tied around her waist like a cape. An older woman, her nanny, I assumed, hovered behind her. Lyubov Moya, you should be sleeping, Nikolai said, but his voice had softened dramatically. I waited for you. She spotted me, and her face lit up. Emma, are you staying over? I didn't know how to answer that. Was I a guest? A prisoner? Something worse? Yes, Nikolai answered for me. Emma will be staying with us for a while. Forever? Anya's hope was so pure it hurt. We'll see. He kissed her forehead. School now tomorrow. Sleep. She hugged me goodnight, fierce and trusting, before letting the nanny lead her back upstairs. The innocence of that embrace, the uncomplicated affection, made my chest ache. When she was gone, Nikolai's mask slipped back into place. Marina will show you to your room, he said, gesturing to a different woman who'd appeared silently. Older, severe-looking, with eyes that assessed and judged in equal measure. Anything you need, ask her. Where will you be? Something dark crossed his face. Dealing with the men who threatened you. He left before I could respond, Dmitri and 4 other men falling into step behind him. The front door closed with a finality that made my stomach twist. I knew what "dealing with" meant in his world. Marina led me upstairs to a bedroom that was larger than my old apartment. Cream walls, soft lighting, a bed that looked like clouds given form. An ensuite bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. "Mr. Volkov had clothes brought for you," Marina said in heavily accented English, opening a closet to reveal outfits in my size. Jeans, sweaters, dresses I'd never have occasion to wear. "If you need different sizes, tell me." How did he know my size? Her expression suggested this was a stupid question. Mr. Volkov knows everything. She left me alone in luxury that felt like a cage. I didn't sleep. How could I? Somewhere in the night, Nikolai was doing terrible things because of me. Men were screaming, bleeding, dying, all because they'd threatened a nobody waitress who'd shown kindness to the wrong child. Around 4 a.m., I heard movement downstairs. Voices. Urgent. Russian. Too fast for me to catch individual words, even if I'd understood the language. Then footsteps on the stairs, a door opening and closing. The shower ran in a nearby room for a long time. I sat in my borrowed bed, hugging my knees, wondering if the water was washing away blood. Morning came gray and cold. I ventured downstairs around 7, following the smell of coffee and something sweet baking. The kitchen was enormous, all granite and stainless steel. Marina stood at the stove, making what looked like blini. She glanced at me, nodded toward the coffee pot. "Mr. Volkov is in his office," she said. "He wants to see you after breakfast." I wasn't hungry, but I forced down half a blini and coffee that tasted better than anything from the diner. Anya bounced in, ready for school, chattering about a math test while Nikolai's driver waited to take her. She hugged me goodbye like it was the most natural thing in the world. Then the house fell quiet, and I had no more excuses to delay the inevitable. Nikolai's office was on the first floor, behind a door that looked reinforced. I knocked softly. "Come in, Emma." Of course he knew it was me. The office was exactly what I'd expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, walls lined with books in Russian and English, a desk that could double as a barricade, and Nikolai behind it, looking like he hadn't slept at all. He'd changed clothes, but I could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the shadows under his eyes darker than usual. "Sit," he said, not looking up from whatever he was reading. I sat in the chair across from him, hands clenched in my lap. He finally raised his eyes, and the intensity there made me flinch. "The men who threatened you are no longer a problem." I didn't ask what that meant, didn't want to know the specifics. "Yuri Antonov sent them as a message," he continued. "To prove he could reach you, to show me he's willing to escalate." His jaw tightened. "He made a mistake." What kind of mistake? The kind that ends with him dead. He said it so casually, like discussing weather rather than murder. "But that will take time. Planning. For now, you stay here." "For how long?" "As long as necessary." I stood abruptly, chair scraping against floor. "You can't just kidnap me. I have a life." "What life?" He stood too, moving around the desk with predatory speed. "Working yourself to death for minimum wage? Living in fear? That's not life, Emma. That's survival. And bare survival at that. It's my survival. My choice. Your choice endangered you the moment you chose kindness." He was in front of me now, gripping my shoulders. "I'm fixing that. Protecting you. Whether you want it or not. I'm not some possession you can lock away." His eyes flashed dangerously. "No. You're something far more valuable." His hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. "You're the first person in years who's made Anya smile like she did before her mother died. You're someone who gave when you had nothing. You're—" He stopped, jaw clenching like he'd almost said something he couldn't take back. "I'm what?" I whispered. "Mine." The word was rough, possessive, absolute. "Even if you don't accept it yet, Emma, you're mine. And I don't let go of what's mine." Before I could respond, he kissed me. Hard and demanding, stealing my breath and my resistance. His hands tangled in my hair, angling my head exactly how he wanted, claiming my mouth like it was his right. And God help me, I let him. Let him back me against the desk, lift me onto it, step between my legs. Let him kiss me until I couldn't remember why this was wrong, until the only thing that mattered was the heat of his body and the desperate hunger in his touch. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. "Stay," he said against my lips. "Not as a prisoner, as something else." "What else is there?" His eyes searched mine. "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." It was the closest thing to vulnerability I'd heard from him, an admission that he didn't have all the answers, that this thing between us was as confusing to him as it was to me. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Good." His thumb brushed my lower lip. "Fear means you're smart enough to recognize danger, but Emma, I'm not the danger you should fear." "Then what should I fear? How much I'm willing to destroy to keep you safe?" The days blurred together after that. I stayed in Nikolai's house, occupying a strange space between guest and captive. Anya loved having me there, dragging me into games and homework and bedtime stories. She was starved for female attention, I realized. The nanny was kind but distant, and Nikolai's world was overwhelmingly male. I filled a void I hadn't known existed. And slowly, I began to fill voids in myself too. Nikolai kept strange hours, gone until dawn some nights, present for family dinners others. When he was home, his attention was absolute and overwhelming. He watched me constantly, studied me, asked questions about my life that went far beyond simple curiosity. "What did you want to be?" he asked one night. We were in his study, him working on something while I read. Anya had gone to bed hours ago, and the house was quiet. "Before life made you a survivor." I set down my book. "A teacher, elementary school?" "Why didn't you?" "College costs money I didn't have." And by the time I'd saved anything, I was too tired to dream anymore. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "If you could go back to school now, would you?" "That's not realistic." "Answer the question." I thought about it. Really thought. "Yes, I think I would." He nodded, made a note on whatever he was working on, and didn't mention it again. 3 days later, Dmitri appeared with enrollment papers for the local college and a scholarship, full tuition, living expenses, everything, that had mysteriously become available for promising students from difficult backgrounds. I stared at the papers, then at Nikolai, who was calmly drinking coffee like he hadn't just rearranged my entire future. "You can't just..." "I can. I did." He looked up, expression unreadable. "Classes start next semester. You'll need time to adjust, catch up on prerequisites. Marina knows someone who tutors." "Why are you doing this?" He set down his coffee, stood, crossed to where I sat frozen. "Because you deserve more than survival, Emma. Because Anya needs to see that kindness is rewarded, not punished. Because..." He paused, jaw working. "Because I want to." It was the simplest, most honest answer he could have given. That night, I found myself in his study again after Anya was asleep. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Russian, but he gestured for me to enter. I curled up in the leather chair by the window, watching rain streak down the bulletproof glass. When he finished his call, the silence stretched between us. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with unspoken things. "Tell me about her," I said quietly. "Your wife." His expression shuddered immediately. "Why?" "Because she's part of why you're doing this, isn't she?" He poured himself vodka, downed it, poured another. "Katya was fierce, fearless. She grew up in the Bratva, understood the life. When we married, she knew exactly what she was getting." "Did you love her?" "Yes." No hesitation. "Completely. She gave me Anya, gave me purpose beyond power, and Antonov took her from me because I refused to partner with him on a weapons deal." His hand tightened around the glass. "She was 8 months pregnant. They made me watch." The rawness of that confession hit like a physical blow. "Nikolai, I killed 17 of his men that night." His voice was flat, emotionless. "But Yuri escaped, and I've spent 3 years preparing to finish what he started." He finally looked at me. "You understand now? Why I'm so intense about protection?" I did. God, I did. I stood, crossed to him, and did something probably incredibly stupid. I hugged him. He stiffened, surprised. Then his arms came around me with crushing force. He buried his face in my hair, and I felt him shake with emotions he'd never allow anyone else to see. "I won't let him take you too," he whispered against my temple. "I can't." "I'm not her," I said gently. "I'm not a replacement. I know." His grip loosened slightly. "You're something different. Something I didn't plan for and don't know how to handle. So we figure it out together." He pulled back, studying my face with those storm-gray eyes. "You're staying? Really staying?" Was I? Every logical part of my brain screamed to run, to escape before I got too tangled in his dangerous world. But the truth was, I was already tangled. Had been since the moment I'd wrapped my cardigan around a shivering little girl. "Yeah," I said softly. "I'm staying." The smile that crossed his face was small, barely there, but genuine. "Good." He kissed me then, softer than before, less claiming and more promising, like he was sealing an agreement neither of us fully understood yet. When we broke apart, his phone buzzed. His expression darkened as he read the message. "What is it?" "Yuri." He typed a response, jaw tight. "He knows you're here. He's demanding a meeting." "What kind of meeting?" His eyes met mine, and I saw the predator fully emerge. The kind where one of us doesn't walk away. The meeting was set for 3 days later, in neutral territory, an abandoned warehouse by the docks that both organizations had used for negotiations in the past. Nikolai explained this to me in his office, his voice clinical, detached, like he was discussing a business transaction rather than a confrontation that could end in his death. "You'll stay here," he said, not looking at me as he cleaned a gun with practiced efficiency. "Anya will be with her grandmother upstate. Marina and 6 guards will be here. The house is a fortress. No one gets in." "What if you don't come back?" His hands stilled. "Then Dmitri will make sure you're taken care of. There's money set aside, documents prepared. You'll be safe." "I don't want money. I want you to come back." He finally looked at me, something raw and surprised flickering across his face. "Why?" "You barely know me. I've upended your entire life, forced you into my world, made you a target. You should hate me." "Maybe I should," I admitted. But I don't. The truth was more complicated than I could articulate. Yes, he'd controlled me, manipulated my circumstances, left me no choice but to accept his protection. But he'd also seen me when I'd been invisible for years. He'd given me safety, opportunity, a child who needed me as much as I needed her. He'd shown me softness hidden beneath brutality, vulnerability beneath power. I'd fallen for a monster, and somehow that felt like the most honest thing I'd ever done. He set down the gun, crossed to where I stood, and pulled me against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, strong, alive, real. "When this is over," he said quietly, "things will be different. Better. I'll have eliminated the threat, and you can breathe. Live without looking over your shoulder. And us." His arms tightened. "There is an us now. Whether that's wise or not. Probably not. Definitely not." I felt him smile against my hair, but I've never been accused of wisdom. The next 2 days were strange, suspended between normal domesticity and impending violence. Anya left for her grandmother's with tears and promises that I'd be there when she got back. I helped Marina cook, read in Nikolai's study, existed in the eye of a storm that was gathering strength. Nikolai was different, more present, more tactile. He touched me constantly, hand on my back as we passed in hallways, fingers threading through mine during dinner, arms around me when we watched old Russian films late at night. Like he was memorizing the feeling of me, storing it against the possibility of never touching me again. We didn't sleep together, not in that way. But he slept in my room those 2 nights, holding me in the darkness, his breathing eventually evening out into something almost peaceful. "I don't deserve you," he murmured the second night, thinking I was asleep. I wasn't. "Probably not," I whispered back. "But I'm here anyway." His arms tightened, and we didn't speak again until morning. The day of the meeting dawned gray and bitter cold. Nikolai dressed in all black, suit, shirt, tie, looking like death personified. He strapped weapons to his body with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. I watched from the doorway, heart in my throat. "I'll be back by nightfall," he said, checking his gun one last time. "Promise?" He crossed to me, framed my face with his hands. "I promise. Yuri Antonov has taken enough from me. He's not taking this, not you." He kissed me, deep and desperate and final. Then he was gone. The house felt empty without him. Marina tried to distract me with tasks, but I couldn't focus. Couldn't think about anything except Nikolai walking into danger because of me. Hours crawled by. Noon came and went. Afternoon faded toward evening. I was in the study, pretending to read, when I heard it, a sound that didn't belong, soft, subtle, the whisper of movement where there should be none. The guards were outside. Marina was in the kitchen. The house was locked down tight. But something was wrong. I stood slowly, every nerve screaming danger. Moved toward the door, reaching for the phone Nikolai had given me, his number on speed dial. The study door burst open. 3 men poured in. Not Nikolai's, not anyone I recognized. They moved with military precision, weapons drawn, and I understood with horrifying clarity that they'd bypass the security somehow. Antonov's men. "Emma Chen," the leader said in heavily accented English. "You come with us now. No screaming." I screamed anyway. Gunfire erupted, the guards responding, chaos exploding through the house. Someone grabbed me, and I fought with everything I had, clawing and kicking and biting like a feral thing. A hand clamped over my mouth, arms iron strong around my waist, dragging me toward the shattered window. Then Dmitri was there, appearing like an avenging angel, his gun barking twice. The man holding me dropped, and I fell hard, tasting blood. More of Nikolai's men flooded in, a firefight in the study, bullets tearing through expensive furniture and priceless books. Dmitri hauled me up, shoved me toward the door. "Run! Get to the panic room, basement, behind the wine cellar." But I couldn't run. My legs wouldn't work, shock paralyzing me. An explosion rocked the house. Grenade, my terrified brain supplied, and the floor buckled. Dmitri threw himself over me as debris rained down, his body a shield. When the dust settled, he was bleeding from a gash on his forehead, but still functional. "Move, Emma, now." This time I ran. Through hallways filled with smoke and violence. Past Marina's body. Oh God. Marina. Downstairs that seemed endless. The basement was cold and dark, wine racks looming like skeletal fingers. Dmitri found the hidden door, shoved me inside a reinforced room that looked like a bunker. "Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me or the boss. Understood, Dmitri?" "Understood." "Yes." He slammed the door, and I heard locks engaging. Mechanical, digital, physical. The room was soundproofed, but I could still feel the vibrations of violence above me. I was alone in the dark with my terror. Time became meaningless, minutes or hours, I couldn't tell. The phone Nikolai had given me had no signal down here. I was cut off, isolated, helpless. Finally, the door locks disengaged. I scrambled back against the far wall, heart hammering. The door opened. Nikolai stood there, and relief hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. He was alive. Covered in blood. Some his, mostly not. His suit torn, his face a mask of controlled fury, but alive. "Emma." My name was a prayer in his mouth. I launched myself at him, and he caught me, crushing me against his chest despite his injuries. He was shaking. This powerful, dangerous man was shaking as he held me. "They breached the house," he said roughly. "Antonov had inside information, knew our security protocols. It was a coordinated attack. Hit me at the warehouse while his other team came for you." "Marina." "I know." His voice cracked. "Dmitri told me. 2 guards dead, 3 wounded. But we got them all. Every single one of Antonov's men who came here." "And Yuri?" His smile was terrible to see. "Dead. I put a bullet in his brain personally after he admitted to planning your kidnapping." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing away tears I hadn't realized I was crying. It's over, Emma. Finally over. He carried me upstairs, literally carried me, refusing to let me walk through the carnage. The house was destroyed, blood and bullet holes everywhere. But his men were already working, cleaning, removing evidence with efficient precision. Dimitri met us in what was left of the living room, his head bandaged but his eyes sharp. Boss, we've secured the perimeter. No other threats detected. The Antonov organization, headless and scattered. We're mopping up the rest. He glanced at me. She fought like hell, bit Sergei so hard he needed stitches. Despite everything, Nikolai laughed, a rough surprise sound. Of course she did. He took me to his bedroom, the only room that hadn't been touched by the attack. Set me on the bed gently, then disappeared into the bathroom. I heard water running. When he returned, he'd cleaned the blood off his hands. Let me see your injuries. I'm fine. You're the one who... Emma. His voice was steel. Let me see. I had bruises forming on my arms where I'd been grabbed. A split lip from falling, scraped knees. Nothing serious. He tended to each wound with surprising gentleness, his jaw tight with barely contained rage at every mark on my body. I'm sorry, he said quietly as he cleaned the scrape on my knee. I promised you'd be safe. I failed. You didn't fail. I'm alive. You're alive. That's what matters. He looked up at me, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole my breath. I thought I'd lost you. When Dimitri called, said they'd breached the house, I've never been that terrified, not even when Katya died. The confession hung between us, weighted with implications. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered. I'll hold you to that. He stood, pulled me to my feet, and kissed me with a desperation that spoke of death narrowly avoided. Marry me. I jerked back, certain I'd misheard. What? Marry me, he repeated, completely serious. Be my wife, mine in
Anya's
every
mother.
way that matters. Nikolai, that's insane. We've known each other for 2 weeks. 2 weeks where I've learned everything about you. Where you've seen the worst of me and stayed anyway. Where you fought armed men rather than let them take you. His hands framed my face. I don't need more time to know you're what I want. What I need. This is crazy. Yes. But so is everything else about us. His thumb brushed my lip. Say yes, Emma. Let me protect you legally. Let me give you my name, my resources, everything I have. Let me make you part of my family officially. My mind spun. This was moving too fast, too intense. I should say no, should demand time to think, to process, to be rational. But when had anything between us been rational? Anya, I said instead. What does she want? His smile was soft. I asked her before she left for her grandmother's. She said, and I quote, "Yes, please, Papa. Then Emma will be my real mama and she can never leave." Tears burned my eyes. That beautiful, innocent child who'd stolen my heart as thoroughly as her father had. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. The kiss he gave me then was different. Claiming but also promising, possessive but tender. When we broke apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. I won't be an easy husband, he warned. I'm damaged, dangerous, my world is violent. I know. But I'll love you fiercely, protect you obsessively, give you everything you've never had. I know that too. We were married 3 weeks later in a small Russian Orthodox ceremony. Anya was my flower girl, wearing my old cardigan over her fancy dress like a badge of honor. Dimitri was best man, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo. Marina's daughter, who looked so much like her mother it hurt, helped coordinate everything. The Bratva attended en masse, dangerous men in expensive suits, their loyalty to Nikolai absolute. They looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and respect, this nobody waitress who'd somehow become their boss's wife. I wore a simple white dress. Nikolai had offered to buy me something elaborate, but I'd refused. I wanted to feel like myself, not like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. When Nikolai slid the ring onto my finger, platinum with diamonds that caught light like captured stars, I saw tears in his eyes. This brutal man who'd killed without mercy was crying as he made me his wife. I love you, he said, the first time he'd spoken those words. My Emma, my salvation. I love you too, I whispered back. My monster, my protector. We honeymooned at his house in the countryside, the one where Anya had spent those few days with her grandmother. It was peaceful there, removed from the city's violence, surrounded by forest and silence. Nikolai was different away from his empire, softer. He taught me Russian curse words that made me laugh, cooked breakfast in his underwear, made love to me with a passion that bordered on worship. We talked about everything: his childhood in Moscow, my years in foster care, our dreams for Anya's future. I want her to have choices, he said one night as we lay tangled together, moonlight streaming through the windows, to never feel trapped by my decisions, or the life I've built. She will, I promised. We'll make sure of it. He kissed my temple. You're going back to school in the fall. I've already set everything up. I know. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just succeed. Show Anya that education matters, that women can be strong and smart and independent. Even if they marry mafia bosses. His laugh rumbled through his chest, especially then. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. I enrolled in college, studying elementary education like I'd always dreamed. Anya flourished with both a father and mother figure, her nightmares about losing her mama gradually fading. The house was rebuilt, stronger, safer, with security that made Fort Knox look vulnerable. I still had moments of disbelief. When I woke up in silk sheets instead of my old broken futon, when I wrote tuition checks without worrying about rent, when I watched Nikolai play with Anya in the backyard, his deadly hands gentle as he pushed her on the swing set, but mostly, I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd given a shivering girl my cardigan on a cold November night. Grateful that her father had seen something in me worth protecting, worth loving. Grateful that I'd found a family when I'd given up hoping for one. 18 months after our wedding, I graduated with honors. Nikolai sat in the audience with Anya, both of them cheering embarrassingly loud when my name was called. That night, as we celebrated with champagne and Anya's careful congratulations, Nikolai pulled me aside. I have something for you, he said, leading me to his study. On the desk sat a folder. Inside were documents, legal papers establishing a foundation in my name, dedicated to helping foster children access education. $50 million to start, he said casually. More if needed. I thought, you understand what they need. Who better to help them? I couldn't speak. Could only stare at this gift that meant more than diamonds or cars or any material thing. You've made me better, he said softly. You and Anya. You've given me reasons beyond power and revenge. Let me help you give that to others. I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into it. Love and gratitude, and wonder that this brutal, dangerous man had a heart capable of such profound generosity. That night, as we made love in the darkness of our bedroom, I whispered against his skin, "Thank you. For everything. For seeing me. Always," he murmured back. "You're mine, Emma Volkov, forever." And finally, completely, I believed it. 5 years later, I stood in the kitchen of our home, the rebuilt fortress that had become a sanctuary, watching Anya help her little brother with his homework. Alexei was 3, with Nikolai's gray eyes and my dark hair, stubborn and sweet in equal measure. Nikolai came up behind me, arms sliding around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder. "What are you thinking? That I gave away a cardigan and got a family." His laugh was warm against my neck. "Best trade in history." "Second best," I corrected. "You got me. True." He turned me in his arms, those storm-gray eyes soft with love that had deepened over years of building a life together. "The best trade I ever made was the one where I chose to protect you instead of just paying you off. Lucky me, lucky us." He kissed me, still possessive, still claiming, but now also familiar. Home. Outside, winter was settling over the city, bringing cold that cut like broken glass. But inside, surrounded by the family I'd built with a monster who'd learned to be a man, I'd never felt warmer. The cardigan still hung in Anya's closet, threadbare and precious, a reminder of the night that changed everything. Sometimes I'd find her holding it, remembering. And she'd look at me with eyes that understood the impossible gift that night had given both of us, a family, a future. A love that had been forged in danger and tempered in devotion. I'd walked into that diner a survivor. I'd walked out of it beloved, and in the end, that made all the difference.